This is the Western Obsessions TV podcast, where hunting's not a hobby, it's an obsession.
All right, guys, welcome back to the Western Obsessions TV podcast. I'm your host, Kurt Belding. This episode is brought to you by Ready Nutrients. Live ready. My guest today for this show, this episode, is Robbie Kroger with Blood Origins. And typically I do like a good little backstory on everybody. But as I was kind of putting that together for Robbie, I realized, man, this backstory might go 30 minutes just to talk about everything that's going on right now. But basically, Blood Origins, and let me know if I'm wrong, Robbie, is a nonprofit organization exposing the truth about hunting and raising a ton of money for a ton of really good causes. Like I said, I'm scratching the surface right now. Robbie's got a ton of stuff going on, but let's introduce him this morning. Good morning, Robbie. How are you?
Morning. Oh, great. Humbled to be here. I enjoy early morning podcasts, not as early as I typically podcast when I'm podcasting with South Africa and Spain and Zambia and whatnot. I actually had a call with Zambia and South Africa this morning. That was at 5:30 this morning. So
yeah, that's early.
I'd finished working out already, so I was already an hour into my day. So
oh, nice, man. I'm a big advocate of getting up early too. Not that, I'm up about 5 and I start working.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah. But I'm sure some of those podcasts, some of those calls are especially over in Africa, super.
Yeah, it's lunchtime then. It's lunchtime there at 6 o'clock in the morning, 5:30 in the morning. And that's one of the things that, that has evolved, is that we have this phenomenal global fingerprint now across the world, and the world doesn't sleep, my man. It's a 24/7 world. We sleep, but whilst we're sleeping, Australia is kicking, New Zealand's kicking, South Africa, Europe, everyone's starting to wake up. So you're 6 hours behind when you wake up in the morning. And my phone, I say to people, there's two types of people in this world. My phone looks pretty good right now. I hate seeing red numbers on my phone.
Yeah.
There's two kinds of people in this world. One that don't really care about the red numbers, and they have 1,000 emails, unread emails, and 100 unread text messages. That would drive me up the wall, give me anxiety. I'm the kind of person that has to zero them out.
I'm with you. I gotta clear the notifications type of guy.
Mm-hmm.
I get back right away because it bugs me. Not really.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, when we wake up in the morning, that phone looks completely different than what it looks like now. It's WhatsApp. You name the avenue for someone to get in touch with us, they utilize it.
Yeah. Oh, there's so many different avenues too.
Mm-hmm.
WhatsApp's very big, especially
huge
from country to country.
Yeah, I'll wake up to 150 WhatsApp messages or 200 WhatsApp messages probably every day.
God, I wouldn't want to get out of bed. I wouldn't want to wake up.
I will say this, because what you'll find is I'm a really honest person. It's certainly one of my morning ablution activities is to work through my WhatsApp list.
Yeah. Well, Robbie, let's get into some of the stuff that you do, man. Give me a little background about you and kind of the gist behind Blood Origins.
Yeah, I'm Robbie Kroger. Thought about this idea 5 years ago. Finally listened to some people who had a little bit of business sense and converted it into a business model that could operate Blood Origins, which is a 501c3. We're a 501c3 non-profit, charitable, public charity organization in the United States that seeks to convey the truth about hunting and promote conservation efforts all around the world. I only came to hunting when I arrived in the States. That was in 2005, 2006-ish. So I've only been hunting for 15 years, maybe 14, 15 years. I'm 44 now, soon to be 45. So you can class me as one of those, cadres of individuals that came to hunting late in its life. But hunting is certainly in my grandfather hunted sort of the meccas, two wildlife paradises, meccas of the world he described. One was he was raised in Russia in the 1910s 20s and 30s. So he hunted Russia, Siberia, northern China, Tibet as a teenager, 20-year-old, 30-year-old kind of scenario, and then moved to Mozambique in the 50s with his family, and then lived the heyday of Africa hunting from the 50s, 60s, and 70s until revolution hit in 74. So I have lots of stories from my parents, from my grandfather specifically. My father killed a Cape buffalo when he was 16 years old as his birthday present. I have trophies on the wall. I have all that kind of stuff, but I never got to hunt. I was raised in a town of Johannesburg, South Africa, 8.5 million people. And so I just, we're not exposed to it. We didn't think about it. And this is how sort of I couch Blood Origins today. We create content for the non-hunting majority. And that was me. I didn't think about hunting. I didn't have a negative perception around hunting. Never crossed my path, except if you were like living in the social media world 15 years ago, which it wasn't around 15 years ago, even 20 years ago. And you saw something, terrible tied to hunting, then maybe you would have skewed my opinion one way or another. If I was neutral in my opinion. Mm-hmm. And so when I came to the States, I finally got to hunt and got to experience what hunting was, and started talking to my grandfather through his stories and his books and whatnot. He was long dead. And that's how we formed Blood Origins. Blood Origins was really just this idea of, how do we convey the truth about hunters and hunting, right? And it's really all about, and conveying means combating, it means telling, it means reporting, it means talking, it means conversing, it means commenting, it means all sorts of things, right? That word.
Yeah.
And it's really combating the rhetoric that's against us. And so you think about the types of rhetoric that's against hunting. Okay, you hunters are just a bunch of killers. Okay, how do we combat that rhetoric?
Right.
We can combat that rhetoric by showcasing videos of hunters in a very emotional, vulnerable, transparent way. And that's what we got known for. That's what put our name on the map, was these videos of very famous hunters and then absolute Joe Blow hunter that lives down the street, that you have no idea who this person is.
Right.
But they speak the same language, and each person, what I love about it is that it's not like the most engaged content in the world, and I know that, and we come to accept that because it's not sexy, quote unquote, for hunters. Mm-hmm. And it also doesn't every single hunter. So we may interview a guy out of Utah, say, for instance. I don't know where you're based. Kurt, where are you based?
Colorado.
Okay. So we interview a guy out of Colorado, big Western hunter. And that story may resonate with you because he's talking about the mountainscapes and the air that he breathes and the physicality of hunting. But it doesn't speak to someone who hunts whitetail in Alabama.
Sure. So
that story really doesn't touch that person. That person would not engage with that, right? So, and that's the thing. We speak to this demographic all around the world. A story about a New Zealand hunter is really only going to touch the New Zealanders. It may touch a little bit of the American, but so I don't care about how many people we engage, because again, we're not building content for hunters. We're building content for non-hunters that may come across it because a hunter shared it into their non-hunting circles. Anybody listening to this, when you engage in social media, you have a circle of a community that lives within your circle that is full of non-hunters, whether you like it or not. Mm-hmm. And those are the people that this content is meant to touch. So rhetoric is, tell me a little bit about your why behind why you hunt. And we've done 74 of those now, and you won't find a single one that says, I do it because I love to kill.
Right.
Which pushes against the rhetoric. Well, then let's do a little, let's like sort of go to the next ring of the circle, which is, okay, can we do some like statistical work around the numbers tied to hunting? And here's where things get interesting. So let's look at the most hunted species in the world, arguably white-tailed deer. Then let's look at the biggest hunting population in the world that hunts that specific species, which is the American whitetail hunter, by far the greatest demographic of hunters in the US and the world. Well, then you ask the question, if hunters were killers, i.e., that's all we were interested in doing. Now, I'll pose this to you, Kurt, because you probably never heard me talk about this. What do you think the percentage, if the rhetoric true that hunting's all about killing, what would be the percentage of kill rates?
Right.
For
And
whitetail deer and whitetail hunters?
with that lead up, you would want to say it should be 100% because it's about killing.
Well, 90%, right? There's some people that miss, some people. So let's just say 90%. Let's just, call it what it is, 90%. When you look at the statistics from the National Deer Association of all the licensed whitetail deer hunters in the country, and this is all tied to reporting, and they're reporting of how many deer they killed. 49% of them only killed one deer. 51% didn't kill anything. Now, again, to be honest, a lot of I've heard the anti-hunting rhetoric, not non-hunters, anti-hunters say, oh, you guys are just shitty hunters. Okay.
Yep, some of us.
Some of us, and that may be true, but such a low percentage should speak to something else. It should say that if we're only killing at a 49% average, maybe there's something else behind hunting other than killing. We'll go to Canada. Use Canada as an example. Canada's even lower, 36%, if I remember the statistics correctly, of somebody getting their one deer. It's less than 1% of you getting a second deer. So it's like, okay, now we have some science, now we have some facts that we can push against the rhetoric, which is that it's all about, and then there's other things that we have never explored. Like, I'd love to build a ratio from Southeast whitetail hunters of how many deer do you see versus how many deer do you kill?
Yes.
Because if it was all about killing, it should be close to a 1-to-1 ratio. But I honestly think, and you could apply this to, you've got elk behind you, you've got mule deer behind you, you've got pronghorn antelope behind you. You could apply it to all these species, right? You drive ratios. It's probably closer to, in the whitetail world, it's probably closer to 250 to 1. Mule deer, it's probably 9 to 1. Pronghorn, it's probably 8 to 1. Elk, it's probably 5 to 1.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Again, statistics that say it can't be all about killing.
Right. And me and you, it's easy just to know that because we're in it. We're smack dab in the middle of it. But for someone that's not in the middle of it, like the stats need to be spoke about.
Yeah, and that's what we do. That's why Blood Origins was built, is to take the things that we don't ever talk about, that we don't even actually ever think about, Kurt, and say, hey, let's push this out there. Like, for instance, I'll give you another statistic. Pennsylvania bears. Pennsylvania bear season. Every year, about 260,000 tags of bears are bought. I think the tag's like $19.89 or $22 or something like that. It generates like $3.6 million for the Pennsylvania Game and Fish Department every year. The vast majority of those tags are being bought for opportunity. Whitetail hunting. Okay. Only 3,600 bears are killed every year. So it's like 2.5 or I can't, I'd have to work out my math. Someone's going to call me out on my math right now, but it's like 3.6%, something like that. That is the percentage of bears taken to tags given.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, you're 100% correct. And kind of like I come across non-hunters all the time. They're not anti-hunters. I'll be honest with you. I don't get in besides social media and YouTube, I'm not in contact with many anti-hunters. It's typically people that are just non-hunters. And if they get curious, I'll explain to them why I do what I do. And after I have my explanation, they're super intrigued and have a completely different understanding of why I do what I do and have quite a bit more respect and even want to try it themselves after I explain it. So what you're doing, and obviously you're doing a whole bunch of stuff, but like one of the main things you're doing is bringing that content out to the public, is you're doing that on a much grander scale than I'm doing one-on-one with a friend or a friend of a friend.
Yeah, and that's all. And we just, slow, steady plot up the hill in terms of our growth, in terms of how many people we touch, and we're only 5 years old. That I keep thinking I've got to reminding myself. I'm like, why are we not bigger? We're only 5 years old. We've only been a nonprofit for 2.5 years, almost 3 years now. And we don't create viral type content.
Right.
We're just very consistent educational type content. That just, it's a slow, steady growth, steady increasing its circle of influence, the people we touch, different countries we touch, that kind of stuff.
And I think you understand the impact that you're making and continue to try to make. But even us as hunters, I think a lot of us don't understand the impact of a guy like you and an organization like you that are making for the industry and the sport of hunting, not even for our sport and our industry, but for the non-hunters and the people that, like for you, like as you said, you didn't have a negative perception of hunting. You just didn't have that. I mean, you had your family that had hunted, but you didn't have that much experience yourself in hunting.
Right.
If you or someone like you or a non-hunter had this information, I think that would change perceptions drastically. And anyway, what I'm trying to say is the impact that you're making on the industry is huge, probably bigger than what you know.
Oh no, there's no doubt. There's no doubt.
Inside of it, looking out, right? But if an outsider looking in, you're like the impact that you're making. So if you guys are listening to this podcast, guys, like you definitely got to look at some of this content. Blood Origins, Robbie Kroger, huge impact for the industry and huge impact for just everybody wanting to know anything about hunting and any kind of.
Yeah, it's funny. You never know who's watching you on social media. That dude does not ever engage you. Okay. And that, number one, is sort of why we do what we do. Like there's, huge accounts, 500,000, million strong accounts that we will purposely say something on, because like we're not going to change the person's viewpoint about hunting. Like they've posted something that's anti-hunting, whatever it is. We'll respond. We'll say something that's very honest. We'll be, and that's one of the deflecting tactics we use, is that if somebody's calling out, these bloody, rich white Americans that come to Africa just want to shoot a lion, we'll be honest, like, yeah, they are. And there are people that do that. And we can't change their motivation. But just for a second, let's just focus on the benefit of the action. Just for a second. If you're truly interested in wildlife conservation, like you said you are, if you're truly interested in like having lions around for our kids and our grandkids one day, wouldn't you agree with me that habitat is the most fundamental element for lions to be around? That's what we'd say in the comment. And if you do agree with me, then you would be all for an activity that protects, 1.5 million square kilometers of habitat all across Africa, right? Did you know that that's hunting? So it's almost like you, and the thing is, we're not trying to convince the person who posted to change their minds, but I know 100,000 people just read what I wrote.
Right. Well, there's 100,000 people that read what they wrote. So to add some truth to it, that another 100,000 or the same 100,000 is going to read your comment too.
Right. And, I know that, again, what we're trying to breed and create is a new narrative around how to speak about hunting, about what you do, why you do it. And that, that takes a little bit of confidence. It also takes a little bit of information and a little bit of repetitiveness, that someone hears me talk about X all the time. Next time they hear somebody say X, they can either verbally say something that is intelligent and they're confident about it. They can write something about it. To me, that's the win for us. But it's so difficult. Like, I'm in the non-profit game, so I have to show, like, I guess, impacts. I can't. There's no way I can understand what that impact is.
Yeah. How do you quantify that type of impact?
No, you can't.
Yeah.
The only thing is you get the random, every so often, the person who tags you and says you need to go check out Blood Origins because in a massive like anti-hunting post, or someone who reaches out, or it's a comment response. Like the best one I've ever received was a big account. It was like one of these, like the real Tarzan, like 6 million people or something stupid, right? And I said something, and the response was from someone that it said, "I'm a bleeding heart vegan, and even this guy makes sense to me."
That's great. How much time do you spend on social commenting on posts?
Constantly. And that's the thing, right? I love the job. We're full-time now. Started in January doing the job full-time.
Congrats, man. That's a big move.
But you're constantly on. So it's tough. The balance part, like the balance of life and the balance of, going and working in the vegetable garden and taking time to play with the kids, and because the phone is life right now. Like the phone is my job, and commenting is our job, and it's non-stop. Like there is no break to it. There's no weekends to it. There's no holidays to it. It is always, always, always on. And even more so probably on holidays and on weekends when people are more active on that social media platform. So yeah, we're on constantly. It's a blessing to be able to do this. I love the job. Don't get me wrong. I love it. I just internally, I struggle with like my balance, and I'll figure that out soon. I have to figure it out soon. Otherwise we'll be in trouble.
Especially when you're the type of guy that doesn't, that it bugs you when you have that red notification on your phone.
Yeah.
Exactly. Just leave it there.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I want to back up a little bit. I'm always curious on how people got into hunting, because a lot like you, like, I want to know how that introduction was made. And most people I talk to is through their parents, through either a father or even a mother or a grandpa. But yours was a little bit adult onset, they call it. So you're a little bit older, and when you moved to the States, how did you get introduced?
I moved to the States. When I moved to the States, I moved to Mississippi, Podunk Town, Mississippi.
Right.
Bastion of redneck hunting. And I met a guy that I worked with, that he's a best mate of mine today. I was in his wedding. He was in my wedding. He's 6'5", 250-pound redneck. And, he had a lot of guns, and, talked about hunting. Have you done hunting? No, I haven't. Do you know what it? I said, yeah, I know what it is. And he's like, do you want to do it? And so we had to go through the whole hunter education, that kind of stuff. And then literally, the first hunt was a semi-automatic 308. Never really shot a semi-automatic 308 before. And he gave me a lawn chair and pointed me towards a wood line and said, go sit under that tree, and if something brown walks by, shoot it. And that was hunting. That was good old farm country Mississippi hunting.
Right.
And very quickly, as I said, just came in late. I was 26. So between like 26 and 29, 26 and 30, I got married, 30, 31. In between that time frame, I had to go through like the cycles, the evolution of a hunter very, very quickly, right? Like I shot something. First, you have to shoot something. Then I was like, oh man, I love that. now I want to shoot a lot of things. Didn't care like what age, whatever, you just shot a lot. If the 3 does came in the field, 3 does were getting laid out. Then I was chasing a big one. I guess I'm still chasing a big one. I've killed 2 bucks, 2 white-tailed deer in 15 years of hunting. And then it's just progressed from there, right? I got a better job, I got more resources, I wasn't a student anymore. Got introduced to different kinds of hunting, got introduced to turkey hunting, got introduced to, more big game style hunting, and had more money. And that's just the progression. And then obviously, when Blood Origin started 5 years ago, then it was more about, like, I was in a stage with my kids. They were 5 and 3, introducing them to hunting. Like, why am I doing this the way that I'm doing it? Thinking about them. How do I introduce them to it? So I went through all the stages of hunting. But no, my introduction was just classic, good redneck style Mississippi whitetail hunting.
Yeah. So take me back to that moment. This is going to be, how you do kind of like your why. I'm not necessarily asking your why, but the moment that you're like, the bug bit you. You're like, this hunting thing is pretty cool. I want to keep doing it. Do you remember that moment?
There were several, but like that first hunt, I don't think I've ever talked about this on the first hunt. That first hunt, I was sat under the tree. It was a morning hunt. Didn't see anything. And we had gotten to know the property. So I walked from there, like down across a dam levee, walked up, and I walked into the backfield and walked along. And there's the field like narrows down to a little road between that and the next field. And literally as I'm walking, a freaking buck walks out onto the road, like a nice one. Like today, even like in my brain, he probably was a 125. That's the kind of deer that I've shot here to I think a 125 and 131 or something like that. But I was like, oh, there he is. Lifted the gun up, sighted him in with my scope, pulled the trigger, and the thing went click. And the buck put his head up and looked at me and ran off. And it was a glimpse into my future as a hunter, because I've had lots of clicks in my life since then. But I walked home and I walked to Landon. He was at the house already. And he goes, did you see anything? I said, man, I just saw a brilliant buck, but your gun is broken. There's something wrong with your gun. He was like, what are you talking about? I said, yeah, you try. You shoot it. You use the same bullet. You shoot it. Takes the bullet out, racks it, shoots at the target, gun goes off. I'm like, what the hell? I did the same thing. He goes, what do you mean you did the same thing? It would have gone off if you'd done the same thing. I said, no. He said, I did what you told me. I got in the stand, I sat down, I loaded a gun, but then I just eased it forward so that it didn't make a noise, like a big clack clack. And he goes, oh, that's what you did wrong. You eased it forward, and you didn't ease it forward enough. You didn't push it in. You just eased it and left it, which left like a millimeter between the firing pin and the bullet itself. So I think that's like that moment, like seeing the buck and the whole like adrenaline. That was to me I still get it, right? If I'm sitting in a whitetail stand and a doe walks out, I'm like, I'm just like, I love it, man. I absolutely, to me, that it was just like an adrenaline of, like, I don't know, being close to wildlife. I loved wildlife, in South Africa as a game ranger. That's what kids you want to be. And it was a cool way to see wildlife.
Yeah.
Cool way to see places. And so, yeah.
Yeah. And it's different. I think it's different than someone going out to the woods or the mountains for the sole purpose of just viewing wildlife, because you don't get the adrenaline rush that you do when you're hunting. Because when you're hunting, there's a goal. The goal is just the 5%, of like, okay, here's the goal. This is icing on the cake. But the 95% is the sitting in the lawn chair that you're sitting in, the waiting and not seeing anything, the going for the walk, going through nature, but you still have a goal in mind. And when that buck came out and that goal presented itself, like, wait, this is a low chance. Like, the percentage of this that happened was really, really low. And the goals here I'm ready. Do I take advantage of this goal of what I'm trying to do? And obviously, everything has to go just right and perfectly for that to happen. And it didn't, but you felt that adrenaline rush because that's completely different than someone just viewing an animal with that
Yeah.
one goal in mind of like possibly to shoot that animal.
Yeah. And I think it was divine intervention that that gun didn't go off then, because then I would have been like, oh, this is easy. Like,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
killed, and I think Landon, my buddy, killed the same buck like 2 or 3 years later on the property. But yeah, it would have been too easy.
Yeah. Well, how I kind of stumbled upon you is obviously on social media, Instagram. And I've seen a couple of your videos, but the one that I'm a big DIY hunter. I love I do a lot of guided hunting too, but my favorite is trying to figure it out myself. And I saw the video you posted about New Zealand being like
Yeah.
that mecca of DIY hunting.
Mecca.
Mecca. And I was like, oh, wait, I didn't even think about that. I thought of like most red stag hunting as high fence and any free range is just not very good. And I saw that video in New Zealand, which really obviously caught my attention. But then as I started digging more into what you were doing, I'm like, wow, this guy's doing a lot for the industry and a ton of like projects. You do a lot of documentaries, you got the podcast, you have the YouTube channel. I think my viewers don't know about you. I really want them to know about some of the projects that you're doing.
Yeah.
Your with your nonprofit. So can you hit on a couple some of the big ones? Some of the ones like I don't I know there's probably not a you can't say there's a favorite, but like maybe some big ones are on the top of your mind.
Yeah. So, we've created a model that we quite enjoy, which is find a project, find the money for it, implement it, then storytell the heck out of it. And that's just showcasing the good work that's happening all over the world from a hunter's perspective. So this year alone, we've invested about $75,000 US. Actually, I went over budget because of the storytelling. I think we're at like $88,000 into New Zealand. The vast majority of that went into putting traps into the landscapes and watersheds to trap stoats and rats and mice to protect native fauna, specifically ducks, Fio, and kiwis, with 3 different organizations down there. And then we went in and we told their story, right? That was the whole point. It's like, it's good to implement projects. We're pretty good at doing that from a hunting perspective, but nobody knows about it, right? Nobody knows how good a job people are actually doing. For instance, I was just talking to a friend of mine yesterday. There's this orphanage in Craddock, Eastern Cape, that used to be like 12 kids in a dirty, ratty room. Nobody knew anything about them. Nobody was looking after them, caring for them, whatnots, nothing. A safari outfitting company in South Africa, Tam Safaris, looked at the orphanage, worked with people in the US, hunters specifically. And that orphanage now serves like 200 kids and has massive impact in the community. And it's, a $250,000 endeavor on a yearly basis now. But nobody knows that story. Very, very few hunters actually even know that story. So that's the kind of thing like that we like to tell. So we invested in New Zealand. We've invested in Zimbabwe in a rewilding effort for anti-poaching this year. We just invested in a communications tower in Tanzania for anti-poaching scouts, a relay station. We've worked with Hunters for the Hungry out of Wyoming. We've raised money for black bear collaring work in Arkansas. And then we also have our documentary projects that we raise money for. So the documentary projects are really the storytelling of our why, of what we do around the world for people, for wildlife, for communities. And so we've done stories in South Africa. We're halfway through, 3/4 of the way through a story in Spain. They got a lot of press coverage earlier this year. We're in like 12 different newspaper articles. We're busy in post-production, really strong post-production on a film that's close to your heart in Colorado called Lionheart, which is a lion houndsman documentary that is being built specifically for non-hunters, and it's going to go into the film festival circuit. We're actually going to. The plan is right now, it just depends. If we get into Sundance, if we get accepted into Sundance, we can't debut the full film. So we'll do a teaser. But we're planning to debut something August the 11th at the inaugural Colorado Outdoor Festival. I don't know if you've heard about it. Dan Gates is behind it, the Out for Predator and Trapping down in Kansas City.
Yeah.
So we'll be debuting our Lionheart there that night. I think Friday night. Something about Lionheart. Obviously we just did a bunch of stuff on New Zealand. We got a proof documentary coming out of Zimbabwe that I'm literally going to see the final this morning on. We got a proof documentary coming out of Zambia that is showcasing this proof is really to show what a ban on hunting is going to do in a very natural experiment way. There's some islands in a lake there's a gradient from private to absolutely no rules kind of island, and look at the gradient of wildlife through those islands to show like what happens if you ban hunting. Well, all of these islands over here that have no rules start expanding over to these islands that are privately owned and they look after wildlife. So we've got a lot, as you said, we've got a lot in the hopper. We're always looking for good conservation projects. We're always looking for good documentary stories. So if your listeners are listening to this, reach out to us. Let us know ideas that you have, people that you know, projects that you know of. We're always interested.
Yeah, and guys, I'll link everything in the description here on my YouTube channel, and then social media. I'll definitely link these guys, tag these guys, plug these guys a lot. So with all this filming and creating content, did you have a background in this, or how do you get this? Because I film my hunts too. I do a lot of like self-filming, and like, man, it is hard, man.
No. I've got a science background. I've got a PhD in wetland ecology and aquatic biogeochemistry. I'm a creative guy. I know what I want it to look like. I know what I want it to feel like. And then I just try to hire the best people I possibly could with the money I had. And those guys have grown with me, and they have matured with me. They've grown their businesses respectively. And they understand more about what I am and what I'm looking for. And so that's what we do. I just have good people doing good work. I supplement that content with, what I do from a talking head perspective. So pushing our perspectives out there, our opinions out there. But yeah, we just hire the best. And yeah, we've got a stable of thoroughbreds, man. We've got the best cameramen, best cinematographers in the world at our fingertips.
When it's important too, like especially the impact you guys are making, you can't just put out a C film. Like it's got to be an A film.
No, that's what set us apart to start with. Is that I set the quality bar so high. I had to differentiate ourselves from the 1,000 other people that were pitching, other concepts, I guess.
Man, you guys got to get on Discovery.
Yeah, one day. I got some ideas.
If I knew someone, man, I would hook it up.
We got some ideas. We got some ideas of like what we want to do. We got some good Discovery type content brewing in the background that I think that would fit probably well.
I think so too, man. I think it'd be fantastic. Well, on a selfish note, man, I want to know more about New Zealand, and how people can, do that hunt without, the difference maybe between hiring a outfitter to go to New Zealand and trying to do it on themselves, man. Because I know that's what you guys just kind of came off of, and it might be somewhat fresh for you.
Yeah. So New Zealand has a phenomenal public land system through DOC, which is the Department of Conservation. You can go on the Department of Conservation's website. They're called DOC, so Department of Conservation New Zealand. There's also an app that you can download, which is like, you may find it on DOC's website, but there's an app that shows you all the public lands in New Zealand. Okay, when you're driving down the road, it'll tell you where public land is and where it is. It's almost like Onyx, but it's not as fancy as Onyx. Okay, any piece of public land you need a hunting license. That's free. You apply for it through the Department of Conservation. It's free. You need to take your gun in there, or your bow. That's not impossible. Guns are more difficult than bows to get into the country, but it's not impossible to get them in. And then you can go hunt. And that's the thing. You can hunt whatever you want. There's nothing really. Say that again.
With a license, you can hunt any species, or do you need like a license?
Whatever you want. Whatever you want.
Huh.
Whatever gender you want, whatever age you want, how many you want. So you can go in. One of the guys that responded, and I would, I'm probably going to give him more business, not more business, but more people heading his way. If you go to that video that I posted, there was a guy that responded in there from the US who had just spent a month in New Zealand doing public land hunting, and he killed a red, a fallow, a chamois, a tar. I don't know if he killed something else, but he killed the big boys, the big things on public ground.
Okay.
And so you can, there's forums. I would do the same thing you did that you would do in the US. There's forums. You can find places to hunt. It depends on the type of species you want to hunt. You can hunt sambar deer. You can hunt sika deer. You can hunt them in the rut. You can hunt them in the velvet. You can hunt them out of season. You can hunt fallow deer. You can hunt red deer. You can hunt Arapawa rams. You can, one of the big adventures that you do, it's a ballot drawing though, so you'd have to put in, but there's an island off the southern tip of New Zealand called Stewart Island. And you hunt whitetails.
No kidding.
On Stewart Island, on the beach, essentially. Oh. It's like almost like a Sitka blacktail Alaska type hunt, but it's whitetails in New Zealand. You can hunt whitetails in New Zealand. There's wapiti in New Zealand, and wapiti is wapiti, but it's a red elk hybrid in Fiordland, and Fiordland is a ballot block. Okay, if you want to go in the raw, these things will bugle raw. It's a weird hybrid mix, but it's just incredible landscape. It's a Jurassic Park landscape. I'm telling you now, it's like ferns everywhere, 8 meters of rain a year. People leave. If you get 10 days in there, if you draw your ballot, people typically leave at day 5 or 6 because they can't handle it.
Really? Because of the rainfall?
Too wet, too cold, too steep. It's just a nasty, nasty place. But if you're after an adventure to kill a nice bull, and they tell you we're growing trophy here. So, 12 point, 14 point, 16 point bulls, that's what they do it on. They don't do it on class system. That's what they're after. And you can have a great time. And here's the beautiful thing about Fiordland. During the raw, which is a set period of time, I don't know when it is, from like maybe March 15th through like June 1, is ballot, straw only blocks. But June 2nd, anybody can go in there.
Huh. That's,
you can hunt your life, you can hunt to your heart's content, so it's just New Zealand, like the West. Like I haven't hunted a lot in the West, so I don't have much of experience. You've got some steep ground in the West, but New Zealand it's Jurassic, right? It's almost like the Alaska Yukon, like on steroids.
Yeah.
It's like Mordor. That's why they filmed freaking Lord of the Rings down there, because it just looks like hell.
So are people doing like bush plane to get to remote places, or
so I'll give you an idea. So where we went and filmed Sika, we got there right in the middle of the rut. It was April 22nd, full moon. Sikas were roaring everywhere. I was like, it was brilliant. It was I'd never heard them roar. We got in amongst them. It was brilliant. The forest is primordial. There's moss everywhere. There's ferns everywhere. There's river crossings everywhere. So you have to have good gaiters. You have to have waterproof boots because you're going to get wet all day long. Okay. We stayed in a hut. It's called the Cascade Hut. Costs you $5 a night on a system to stay in the hut.
No kidding.
You can walk into the hut from the car park. It's a long ass walk. It's like 18 kilometers. But you can walk in there. It can take you all day. Or you can get Heli Seeker. It's a helicopter company that lives right there by the parking lot. And for $500, they'll fly you in there. It'll be an 8-minute flight.
Yeah. Completely worth it.
And you tell them, come pick me up in 10 days' time. You take in all your food. There's really good water there. There's a good house, firewood, and you just hunt.
Yeah.
And there's Seeker in there. I don't know if there's anything else. There's not much else in there. There's a couple of reds. So you'd be purposely going after Seeker.
Right.
But there's lots of other places like that in all other country, right? Tar country, find a backcountry hut. You can walk into it. It's going to be a long ass walk to get in there, or chopper in there, and sort of make a route between one hut and another hut. And you're going to tell the helicopter pilot, come pick me up at that hut in 8 days' time. Make sure you've got your inReach and your satellite communicator, and then just go, man.
Sounds amazing.
And it's free. So that's free, right? Then there's another tier underneath that is expensive, but is not as expensive. Okay. So when I say, so that would be hiring a guide. There's a guy on Instagram called Hard Yards Hunting. In New Zealand, hard yards is like a good pull up the mountain. Like those are hard yards.
Right.
Like, that's what it's colloquialism in New Zealand. His name's Joseph Peters, and he's a guide, but he doesn't guide on private ground. He guides on public. So he knows where the animals are. He's going to guide you, help you kind of scenario. So if you want a guide, you want someone to help you, it's going to cost you a little bit more other than free, but you can still have an amazing adventure. And then the final step would be you have a lot of money and you go to an estate, high fenced hunting operation. There's lots of really, really good ones. And you can hunt whatever they've got arapara rams, they've got fallow deer, they've got red stags, they've got elk, whatever. They've got, places if it's Seeker, other places have sandbar, whatever you want. You can really hunt it. But again, it's tied to your pocketbook. And they're true, again, to be truthful, they scale it to the ability of you as the hunter, right? So you could hunt a high fence operation that would kick your ass just like you would on public ground, right? Or super easy hunt. It's up to you.
Yeah, it sounds like they have it all. And high fencer, I've hunted high fence before just for the experience, to have fun. It's not my cup of tea typically. One, I don't have the pocketbook deep enough to always do that. And there's just something about knowing that there's animals in a fence, whether or not I see the fence or not, whether or not there's thousands and thousands of acres. I prefer the free chase, the public, and I'm okay getting skunked. I'm okay not getting anything. It's about the experience for me. But it sounds amazing, man. I definitely need it. I've already talked to the wife after seeing your video and talking to you a little bit on Instagram, like, hey, do you want to go to New Zealand? Because we're going.
And look, the thing is that there's amazing things to do outside of hunting in New Zealand. It's the adventure capital of the world. Highest bungee jump. Well, no, it's not really. It's the second highest bungee jump in the world. There's some jet boating stuff. You go to a place called Rotorua, and there's like thermal springs everywhere. If you know where to turn off, you don't have to pay for thermal springs because the river's just there, and the river's public, and the river has a bunch of thermal pools in it, right? To the point where it's so hot you can't get close to the thermal pool. You have to be downstream a bit so that the water, cools itself a little bit.
Yeah.
You have beaches that you can dig in the sand, and warm, thermal water comes into the hole in the sand that you made in the beach. To great fishing and great spear fishing and just friendly people also, just really, really, really friendly people, good food, good local, they love their, very local eating type culture. but also at the same time, just not like you would expect a really, really, really first world type culture. It's first world, don't get me wrong, but it's almost like 5 years behind us or 10 years behind us.
Yeah.
Like Wi-Fi isn't great. Cell phone coverage sucks ass. Your highways, there's not a single like double laned highway in New Zealand. They're all single lane highways. You're like, what the hell? They just don't have the people for it, right? There's no point. There's no reason.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's amazing. You need to go for sure.
Sounds amazing, man. There's one more topic I wanted to go over, Robbie, if you still have time for it.
Yeah, of course.
Pretty new. I mean, it's not new. It's been going on for a while, but like it just came out that the Hunters got a little bit of a victory here. I'm sure you're pretty privy with the corner crossing.
Oh yeah, I'm going to podcast this evening about it. Actually,
Got it. Can we touch on it a little bit on this?
Yeah, for sure.
Thoughts and opinions, because obviously I have mine. I'm very happy of the ruled for the Hunters, and it opens up and frees up a ton of public land. If you guys are not privy with this, there's a couple guys, I believe they were out of, was it Wyoming or Montana? I think it was Wyoming, right? Wyoming. That man, it's I don't have enough time to explain all of it, but the gist of it is there is public land that are cornered touching that are locked up, and there's a gray area that you can't jump from corner to corner. What's a gray area? You can't. It's no one really knew if you could or not. From jumping from one side to the other across the corner to go from public land to public land. A couple of guys got charged with trespassing. They fought it. Huge battle, and the battle is way bigger than what we think of a normal trespassing charge, because this is going to be the president's to say, hey, can we access hundreds of thousands of public land that used to be not being able to be accessed? But Robbie, tell me your opinion, man. Enough about me rambling. What do you got to say about it?
Yeah, I think so. The original grayness was that there was an infinite, think of it like a column of air that went from the ground to infinity. That if you think about it like a circle, was owned by 4 different things. And so when you moved through that airspace, you were trespassing on quote unquote someone's land, which it wasn't technically land, it was just the air above it. And so if you truly stepped from one corner to the other, you never truly trespassed. You never really stepped on someone's ground. Now, I think probably, and I don't know this for sure, I'll find out tonight, but I would think that the whole idea of that corner crossing rule in the beginning to start with was legitimate, and probably has a lot of people scared today as it's changed, in that what's going to stop the person just seeing an animal over there and just sort of taking the animal and pulling it back onto public ground? Hopefully people do the right thing and respect the boundaries and respect the private land, public land interface, which they do already. All right. Not saying they don't do it right now. It's just going to be a little bit more challenging, and there's going to be a little bit more temptation now.
Yes.
Because there's lots more corners.
Yes.
That intersect. But I agree with you. I think it's a great thing. In terms of access, especially like when you think about hunting and its issues with like keeping people in, and probably the major, Matt Ranella that we have on our podcast regularly talks about this and started, Hunters for Access program. Access is like one of the hurdles that people struggle with when it comes to becoming a hunter. And then people push back and say, well, we shouldn't be recruiting more hunters because we don't have space for more hunters. It's already crowded as it is, people. Stop making more hunters. Well, in Wyoming, because of this case, we just opened up 2.4 million acres of public ground.
Yeah.
That's huge, right? Now, the problem is, will people, again, do the right thing, abide by the way that it's supposed to be abided by, don't sidestep, don't go around, don't cut a corner, do the right thing, because that's going to happen. That's going to be the next thing that's going to happen. I guarantee it.
Yeah.
I'll put money on it right now.
Yeah.
Is that there's going to be a landowner that's probably that has a corner that's probably easily accessible, that access is a lot more behind it, that's going to become almost like a throughway highway for people, and he's going to monitor it.
Yeah.
And he's going to have law enforcement, and he's going to have cameras or something like that, and someone's going to step out of line.
Oh yeah, it'll happen.
Someone's going to do the wrong thing, and then that's going to then enforce, then that's going to go to court, there's going to be suit, and this whole thing's going to come up again. I can put money on that happening, because people are people, unfortunately.
Yeah, but it's just human nature.
Great life.
What's that? Sorry.
I said, no, I think it's a great thing.
Yeah. And it's human nature sometimes, as we get an inch and we want to push and try to make 3. And I understand it's going to happen. And I've had my own frustrations with Wyoming, and I understand the landowner side. I understand the hunter side. I went and did an antelope / mule deer hunt last year in Wyoming, and I thought I had a lot of public land. I didn't go scout boots on the ground. I e-scouted it. And when I got there, I realized that there was private land surrounding the public land and had landlocked majority of the public land I was planning to hunt. And we're not talking about a few acres. We're talking about thousands and thousands of acres. So I was definitely frustrated that I couldn't reach this public land that the public pays for. But I understand the owner's point of view too, is, man, if my land's surrounding this public land, now my land just increased by X amount of acres because no one can get to the public land. It basically becomes my land, and then your land becomes more valuable. I understand that as a business side, whether or not it's right or not. I also understand landowners of not wanting hundreds of hunters crossing through and buy their land. And not every hunter, like you said, there's few bad apples in every bush in every industry. Not every hunter is going to respect that landowner's land. Right. But I see both sides of it. But I do think this was a good thing to unlock some public land that's been locked up and that we're paying for. The public's paying for,
Yeah, I'm with you, man. I'm with you. So we're going to go, I'm actually podcasting with the BHA lawyer tonight that wrote the amicus brief.
No kidding.
Of the, that obviously won the sort of case. So, we'll get into the details of it later today.
Yeah. Well,
but no, I think it's a good thing. And I don't know if it's going to be, what that means for other Western states, because everyone's in the same boat. Do they do the same thing, or does, legislation get proposed that then sort of mimics what's happened in Wyoming?
Right. I mean, off the top of the head, you think, okay, the dominoes will fall and the rest of the states will follow suit with whatever ruling had just happened. But yes, obviously, if you're on the other end of the spectrum, you want to put legislation in to stop that, right? So,
but I don't think they would win, because there's precedence now and there's law on the books. That's what the whole legal system is, right? Once someone says X and agrees with X, well, then X applies. Everything. Yeah.
X applies. Yeah. So exciting stuff for hunters. And Robbie, I know I pushed you over time here a little bit.
Oh, it's all good.
Appreciate that, man. But any other burning topics you want to talk about before we say goodbye?
No, I'd leave people that have hung on this long with one thing. And a lot of people typically ask me, like, what can we do? What can we do for hunting? What can we do for Blood Origins? Number one, if you have financial means, you can support us. We only ask for the cost of a cup of coffee a month. So $3 a month, $4 a month, $5 a month. Donate that to us. It helps us do what we do every single day. And you also get thrown into a giveaway every month of all sorts of gift cards and gear and all sorts of cool stuff. We've got a couple of hunts coming, so it's worth your bucks for multiple reasons. If you cannot support us financially, you're like, I don't have that money. It's like, well, I think you do, because you buy a cup of coffee probably every week. So, but I understand. Times are tough. Then all I would ask is share the content. Share, because that's introducing the content. That's not Robbie, it's not Blood Origins, it's our hunting community's content into your non-hunting circles. So I would share it. And if you are like, I don't like sharing shit, I'm like, okay. Then all I would ask you to do is think. I want you to think, because thinking is going to save hunting. If you think before you take your shot, is this a good shot to take? Is it not a good shot to take? Should I take it? What is going to happen if I do take the shot? Yada, yada, yada. Think before you post a picture. Is this a good picture? Is it not a good picture? Does it help herd hunting? Think before you write the comment. Did I give enough context? If someone watches this from outside my circle and sees this, what are they seeing about me? They seeing that you're a cold-blooded killer, or that you respect wildlife. And then think that before you say something back to someone. If someone says X, Y, I hate you, you're a liberal snowflake because you use a trad bow. Think before you respond, because your response is a reflection on us as hunters in the hunting community. So 3 small things that you can do that will just help the ball get the rock, the stone, get pushed up the mountain.
Yeah. I'm going to add to that a little bit. Non-hunters, if you're listening to the podcast, or anti-hunters, if you're probably not, or maybe listening to it for some ammo that you could probably find, is the think, right? Like some of the things, we didn't go in huge depth in some of the stuff, but we grazed some good topics, and think about hunting and try to just open up your mind a little bit to why so many people do it and what that does for conservation, so, and I'm more than willing, reach out to me. I'm more than willing to have a conversation with anybody individually. I'm sure Robbie is too. And
sure,
open up your mind a little bit.
Yeah. We actually, a podcast that I really like to do, I've done a couple of them now, is just, you don't like hunting, you don't understand hunting, you're a non-hunter, or you are a non-hunter and leaning against hunting, come on our podcast. It's an open forum, and then you can ask me any question you want about hunting. Anything. No prep. Don't send me the questions. Yeah. Just let's get on a podcast. We'll record it. And you ask me questions. I did one with an 18-year-old Kenyan girl.
Ooh.
Who slid into my DMs and said, I do not understand the purpose of your Instagram. And I said, really? I said, well, here it is. And she then back and forth. I said, look, I can't back and forth with you on Instagram. I said, why don't you just come on my podcast? And you can ask me anything you want. And when people listen to that, I think it's like episode 7. It was like one of the very, very first podcasts. I think we're at like episode 360 now. But go listen. Her name is Mimo Somei. And it's an hour and 20 minutes, hour and 30 minutes, but at like 45-minute mark, you can hear her break. Like she's just like, she doesn't have hardly any more questions, because she's just like, oh, there was some crazy stuff. Then the other good one I had was with somebody very influential here in the United States, a lady called Jen Widerstrom. Jen Widerstrom is a fitness influencer, sort of coach, nutrition, life, strength coach. And her claim to fame was she was one of the coaches of The Biggest Loser. And she commented on a post. This is how our life works. She commented on a post by a charity that's completely anti-hunting about a crocodile, and how dare someone kill a crocodile. And I got tagged into that post, so I commented, and then I looked down. I always do this. I look to see who else commented. And Jen Widerstrom commented saying, how disgusting. And so I responded to her, and then I DM'd her and I said, look, we live in the same circles of friends. I said, what that post didn't tell you, and that I know, is when they cut the belly open of that crocodile, there was 6 shoes of people in the belly of that crocodile.
Whoa.
Did you know that there was a man-eater, Jen? Oh my God, I didn't. And I said, Jen, come on my podcast and let's talk about wildlife conservation and hunting and what it does. And her famous quote that she quoted, that I used as a quote in my podcast, was, "You defend things I unfollow on Instagram."
Huh.
But she's a good friend now. And she was like, my eyes are opened. Thank you.
That's awesome, man. That makes me want to do some of that stuff on my podcast too. I think it'd be fun.
You need to.
Interesting, but fun.
Well, just be ready, because you don't know what's going to hit you. You got to have your act. You can't like stutter, right? You just, because who knows what they're going to ask.
That's true. And I'm not privy on the numbers like you are, so I'm gonna have to brush up some numbers, some stats. So, all right, Robbie, man, thanks for coming on. I'm gonna, like, you guys, if you're still hanging on the podcast, I'm tagging linking all the stuff in the description. And definitely, well, Robbie, why don't you tell the listeners
Just
where
go Blood Origins, everything.
Blood Origins.
Blood Origins everywhere. Google, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, whatever.
They have great stuff. Absolutely great stuff, doing great things for the industry and for the sport, and doing great things for non-hunters and even anti-hunters that maybe can open up their mind a little bit and understand a different side of the story. All right, guys, this is the Western Obsessions TV podcast. I'm your host, Kurt Belding. You're listening to Robbie Kroger with Blood Origins.
This is the Western Obsessions TV podcast, where hunting's not a hobby, it's an obsession.